creation of connection is a very costly operation. It takes a lot of time. You can in that time creating a connection takes a more time. So in that time you can normal instructions, you can run many of the instructions. That means creation of connection is a costly operation. So why I need to create a connection at that particular request of time? I should have I mean at the time of running my application only, right? Sorry, at the time of running the my server, at the time of deploying my application only. That means at the time of startup. At the time of startup only, I want to create a pool of objects. I want to create 5 or 10 objects. Whenever I need, I will take from the pool. I don't create at the time. I will take one of them from the pool. That is not normal operation. Okay, I don't need to create at the time. Already I use created objects that are created at the time of startup. Okay, so that's why connection pool is there. Connection pool, you can mention size here as 2. That means at the time of deploying our application, it is creating as pool size as 2. 2 connections it is creating whenever you are getting a session, right? Whenever you are getting a session, at that time it is using that connection instead of at that time it doesn't create. Dialect. Which dialect you have to specify? If it is a MySQL, you have to specify MySQL dialect so that it knows what is the particular database. Okay. Session context, manage a session context. So this is a Hibernate. This is a Hibernate specific. We will discuss later this one. And second level cache, we will discuss about what is the first level and what is the second level. Currently we are not using any cache, so that's why I am using no cache provider. Show SQL is nothing but whenever you run your application, I told you, right, whenever you say session.save of entity, it is creating an insert query. It is automatically saves in the database, right? Whenever you save any object, it also persisting data in the database as well, right? So that means so it is generating some insert query. Okay, so all the queries you can see using the show SQL as true. If you show SQL as false, you will not be see in the console. You cannot see the query in the console. Okay, we will now discuss about this property HBM to DDL.auto. We will discuss about this property. Currently it is create. Okay, so mapping. What is mapping? So what are the entities? Right? These entities you have to specify in the CFG file. What are the beans you specify as an entity? Those entities you have to specify in the in the session factory in this CFG.xml so that it knows this employee is creating, this is an entity. You need to specify Hibernate. This is the class which I am going to okay. So mapping class equal to some employee, right? So what I'm doing, so whatever the entities in my project, what are the entities in my project, that entities I have to specify in the cfg.xml, right? So in this mapping, so this is a tag I use. So there may be any number of objects in my any number of entities. When I say entity, right, it's a bean. which is having some mapping in the database. So it's an entity. So employee, I have a map, right? So I have database table for it, right? Cabinet one, employee. Okay, so employee has a map. That means it's not a normal bean. It's an entity. So entity means it's a we have a it's a hibernate entity, right? So that's why we specify employee. Okay, so in this right, so there are there are these are the entities are normal Java beans. Okay, so whenever we specify @entity annotation, so Java X persistent dot entity, so it uses persistent API. So nowadays every ORM framework supports JPA standard. So that's why I'm using annotations. So JPA is a standard. So it is a specification basically. Okay. So in every ORM framework you take @entity. If you place @entity, it creates an table in the database. So any ORM framework you take. Okay, it's a top link, let's say top link, it has its own configuration file, right? But employee object is same, the class will be same, the configuration file will be different. It has its own, it may be have its own XML. IBITs if you take, it has its own XML. Okay, so this is about Java persistency API. That means we are using Hibernate with JPA. Okay, Hibernate client. So if you in order to save your object, so you need to have a session factory. See, if you want to save object in the database, you need to know about the database first. Who knows about database? Session factory knows about database because we have provided in the session factory tab. Session factory know about the database. So I have to create the object for the session factory, so that session factory object will be created with this configuration, right? So all this information knows only by further session factory. So I have to create the object for session factory. So I have to create object using new configuration. New configuration is a Hibernate object, right? So configuration means this is a configuration dot configure. So configure I am not giving any argument to the configure, right? So you can also give argument to the configure like string resource. That means if you don't provide any argument to the configure, it will directly reads configure.hibernate.cfg.xml. Okay, if you want to write your configuration in some other XML, you have to specify in the configure method. Within double quotes, you have to specify your own XML. You don't need to specify hibernate.cfg.xml only. You can also specify any other. By default, it takes hibernate.cfg.xml, build session factory object. So it creates session factory. Out of it, I have to create a one session. Okay. Okay, I have to use session.save in order to save the employee object. Right? Session. So before saving it, you have to start transaction using session.begin transaction and session.get transaction.commit. So what I'm doing, I'm beginning the transaction, I'm committing the transaction. Right? After that, I'm closing the session. So employee saved successfully. So once it is saved, it is storing in the database. Okay. Again, I'm running the program. Run as. Okay, employee saved successfully. See, if you are able to see the query, right? So now suppose in the configuration file, if I make it as false, let's show SQL as false. In the Hibernate employee class, run as Java application. You will not see the query now. Okay, that is the difference. So now I am making as true because I need to track of all the queries. Right, so Hibernate client run as Java application. So again I am able to see the query. Again I am seeing same data. Suppose I have changed this data 125, sorry, 25 years to 26 years. I am saving. Okay, so now I am running the program. Alright, so now again insert statement I am able to see. Now if I run my program, sorry, if I run the query, I got 126 Kranti. So what happened earlier entry 25 entry? What happened 25 entry? So it was not there now, right? It was not there now. That means it is every time whenever I save the session, whenever I save the object, every time it is creating a new entries, right? That means that is because of the reason here create. Okay, so what create will do, drop and recreate the database schema on startup. Okay, on startup it drops complete schema, right? It recreates the schema again. It recreates the schema again. That means it drops completely the database, it will delete and it will recreate. So it is very, I mean, we should not, every time we should, first time only we have to do create, right? After that we have to do update, right? So we should not allow, from now, we should not allow to create, right? We have to do update, right, from this point. See, did you observe here, whenever I run the program, every time when I say session.save, it is complete, I mean, whenever I start my program, it is completely deleting all the tables in the database. Again, it is creating, right? I don't want that. I want update. It doesn't need to recreate. Okay. So now what I am doing, again if I run my program, to run again, okay, if I run again same ID, right, so it will not allow. I am making S2 run as Java application. Okay, refresh. Okay, I have two entries. Now if I run my program several times, sorry, so you have to change the ID, right? So because it is trying to use the same ID to create other third row, because ID is a primary key, you should not have a same ID, so you have to change to 3. Run as Java application. So it has inserted, right? But if you create here, whenever if you hbm2ddl.auto property, if you make as value as create, so what it is doing, whenever you run your application, it is recreating complete schema. Okay, you will see only one entry because it is created complete schema newly, so you will see only one entry. Right, again if I use create, right, whenever you run your application, you will see only the newly added entry, right? So run as Java application. Okay, so only one entry. Okay, that is about this property. So I want only update from now on. Any doubts? Which duplication है? I mean data duplication or ID duplication you mean to say? No, we cannot have a control, right? That is depends how we have to do it. Yeah, we have to do it. See, if it is a ID, if it is a primary key is different, that is a not a duplicate, right? It's if employee ID is different, it is not a duplicate employee. Uh, yes, of course. You have to write a logic your own. It doesn't provide any logic. Even database itself doesn't provide, right? See, there is a table. There is a table with there is no primary key in that, right? It will always allow duplicates of all entries, duplicate of data, right? Database itself doesn't provide that. So how Hibernate can provide? Database itself cannot provide. So you have to write manually, select with this data is already exist or not. If it exists, only insert. Otherwise, don't insert. You have to write your own logic. Yeah. Okay. So every time I'm inserting set ID, right? So I don't want to create the ID myself. Okay. I want to Hibernate to take care of generating ID. Okay. I don't want to do this. Okay. I don't want to do this every time. So I'm removing this. What I want to do is in the employee, this is the ID, right? This is the ID. I don't want to give manually. I want to take care of generating this ID uh, by the Hibernate itself. So you have a property here. Sorry, you have an annotation here, generated value. Okay, this is the annotation again javax.persistent. Okay, I don't want to give it every time, right? So I am running my program again. Okay, I think we have to specify the strategy. Strategy equal to, okay, generator type auto. So run as couldn't insert employee. What is it requires? Couldn't insert. field ID doesn't have default value. So it's generating the query properly without ID. It's fine. So I'm asking to generate maybe something. Okay, so maybe this is the, we have to write in the next line. Okay, I will show you in the next session. I will check it. What is the problem? So currently I am keeping that ID. Okay, I am not using this generated value. I am removing this input. Okay, so now again I am running the program with ID 4. Right, run as Java application. Okay, I'm able to see the rows here as 4, ID 4 also. Okay, so if you observe here, the same entity names I'm getting here, right? The same entity name employee, the same ID column, the same age, all column names are nothing but property names, right? Nothing but property names. Table name is nothing but class name. So I don't want a table name like this. I will keep my bean class name as employee only, but table name should be created. The entity name should be created with some other name. Okay. So what I will do, I can, for the entity there is a property name. Okay. So in this name I have to provide the some name. So what is the name of the table I want? EMP, let's say. Okay, I want to EMP, entity name is EMP, table name is should be EMP. Okay, now so what I need to do, I need to recreate the table, right? So that's why I'm saying create, right? It has to drop. Okay, what happens, let's see what happens if I use update. Okay, now I'm running, so I'm changing the data as 5. Okay, run as Java application. Okay, so if you observe in the Hibernate, it generated with the EMP, insert into EMP, right? Now I am refreshing the schema. So you are able to see EMP and employee, right? So if you see EMP, so it is taken new value, employee is taken old values. Old values, I mean that means whenever you say update, so it takes care of it doesn't worry about employee class, right? Employee table, right? So it's a completely it thinks that it's an external table, it's not entity map table, right? Now EMP is a table, it's point to that, right? Suppose if I say create, run as Java application. So refresh schema. Okay, again, so employee entity will be recreated, right? Entity is recreated. See, these are employee is a table. Employee is a table which is not mapped to the Hibernate at all. I can create my own tables also, right? I can create my own tables with some, right? So I can create my own tables, but it is not mapped to the Hibernate. it is mapped, it is not mapped to the Hibernate. It's not, this is a table which is not created by the Hibernate session, Hibernate, right? So what are the tables which are mapped for the Hibernate? Those will be recreated. That schema will be recreated. So currently EMP is the only table which is mapped in the, which is an entity in the Hibernate, right? Which is an entity in the Hibernate. So this table will be recreated every time. The other tables will be remain same. That is not the control of, in the control of Hibernate, right? What are the what are in the control of Hibernate? Only EMP table, right? So I'm removing these two tables. I don't want. Okay. Anyway, so I changed the employee EMP, and I want to change the names of the columns also. So I want to change the name of this column. So I can use column annotations. Column, right? Name equal to EMP name. Okay, I want EMP name. Similarly, age. Okay, so I have created this, right? So run as Java application. Okay, even if you see Hibernate, how the insert query will be is generated, EMP age, EMP name, ID. So why it is not EMP age, right? EMP age. Okay, again run as Java application. Right, insert into EMP, EMP age, EMP name. So new columns. If you see in my database, refresh, right? EMP age, EMP name, and EMP. So entity name became EMP, column names have become EMP name and EMP age, right? Okay, if you observe here, by default employee name generated with the length of 255 characters. Okay, by default employee name be length as 255 characters. Okay, that means whenever you say any string, in the Java, in the MySQL, it creates a column of type varchar and length 255 characters by default. What if I want to have more than 255 characters? I want 1000 characters. What if I want 1000 characters, right? So you can specify again here the length of the your data type, length equal to 1000 characters. Length equal to 1000 characters. You need to specify integer. Okay, 1000 characters. So again I'm running the program. Right, I'm refreshing the schema on the employee table, edit table. So we are seeing some long text. Alright. So suppose if you see 256, 259, run as Java application. Okay, so refresh schema, employee table. So we are seeing long text. So maybe more than 255 characters, MySQL become long text. Okay, so So you can have a control over database length using this length uh, attribute. So you can have the length of the, you can declare the length of the string in the database using this particular property. Okay. So similarly, let's say I have date, private date. It should be a Java date, right? Sorry, because it should be a Java date. So Java date means java.util.date and join date. Okay, so I want to generate setters and getters. So right click, source, generate getter setters. Okay. Similarly, when I want to save date also, so I want to set the date as current date. So set join date as new date. So date means Java util.date. Okay. Now I am running my program again. Run as Java application. Okay. So let me refresh the page. Refresh schema. So it is generating join date. Right. So if you take in the, so it is a date time. It generated date time. So I want only date to store. I don't want time to store. Okay. There is a property here in the, for the date called temporal. Temporal type dot date time or date time. What you need? I want only date. Okay. So by default it is storing date time, right? So now it stores only date. Okay, I'm refreshing, I'm executing the query again, so I'm able to see only date, not date time. So if you open the table, it is only date data type now. Okay, now the mapping became changed. Now date time, it is not a date time data type, it's a date data type. Right? Any doubts till now? Okay. So we'll move into more into other annotations. For example, it's very important. It should be very okay. So it is common that in one class there is an other class. In one class there may be an other class, right? Suppose what happens if it is a date, if it is an integer, it mapped to number in the database. If it is a string, it mapped to varchar in the database. If it is a date, it is mapped to date in the database. What happens if I have my own data type? What happens if I use my own data type in here, right? So let's say I have an address, private address, right? Home address, right? So this address class I want to define now. Create class address. In the same beans, okay, that's fine. Okay, I want private string street private string pin. I want to generate setters and getters here. Run as, sorry, source, generate getters and setters, select all. Okay. Okay, these are the getters and setters. And in the employee also I want to generate getters and setters for the address. Source, generate getters and setters. Fine. So for the home address, right, that means you embedded some other object in employee object. So you have to tell the Hibernate that you are embedding. Okay. See, address is not a new entity. Entity means what? Again, there is a separate table for the address also in the Hibernate, in the database, right? You have to again specify mapping. You are not specifying address. You are not specifying as entity. This address is not an entity. It's an embedded object, right? So since it's an embedded object, you have to specify that it's an embedded. Okay, right? Using the annotation called embeddable, and in the employee you have to specify that embedded. Okay, this address is embedded, and this in the address class it's embeddable annotation. You have to specify these two annotations. Okay, in the address class you have to specify embeddable. In the employee class you have to specify embedded. Okay, remaining is same. So I want to create an address class also in this. So now I want to create an address class also here. So address, right, equal to new address dot set pin as something by neck 20 address dot set street as United City. Okay, so this address I want to give to employee. Set home address, right? Home address as sorry, right? I am giving normal bean setting, normal bean setter method only I use it to set the employee address. So remaining all are same. The only thing is you have to specify that it's embedded. Run as Java application. Right. If you see here in the employee table, it was inserted with the pin and street in that same table. Right. That means you embedded the other two columns also. So if you see in the I'm refreshing the schema, in the table pin and street also came for the same table. It's embedded in the same table. Right. Again, this is same, right? So in the employee, in the address class, again, if you want some different name, again you can use column, right? Column name equal to, instead of street, I have to use street name. Some instead of pin, I have to use pin code, length length should be some 10, not more than 10. Okay, something like this. So in the Hibernate run as Java application. So it was inserted. I am refreshing the schema. And if you see edit table, see pin code is generated with the varchar of 10 because the length is 10. If you specify more than 255 characters, it is doing long text. It is treating as long text. So, and if it is a 10 characters, it is generating with varchar of 10. So if you refresh, you are able to see the right. Any doubts? Okay. So in the employee, there is another column called description. Okay. Private string description. No, Neha, actually, see, whenever you use an entity, okay, every attribute, sorry, every attribute in that class have a column in the database, right? So ID will have column in the database, name will have column in the database, age will have column in the database, join date will have column in the database. And Hibernate internally maps Java data types to uh, database data types. So if you say integer in the employee in the Java class, that is in the MySQL it becomes integer of database type, right? Similarly, string in the Java object represents varchar in the MySQL. In case of integer, it's again integer. It's in case of date, again it's a date or date time, depend upon your temporal type, right? But what about address? There is no predefined mapping between address to your own custom class to database, right? Hibernate only have mapping between predefined data types of predefined data types of Java and predefined data types of database. It doesn't have any automatic mapping address, right? Home address will not be created, right? That's why I told embedded. So it doesn't, I mean, so address object means what? Address means it's a collection of street and pin code. Okay, so that's why it is automatically creating street and pin code. It's embedding, right? Suppose if you take address as a separate entity, there will be a address table will be created again. So I am not, see, whenever I say entity, there is a separate table. So I doesn't want separate table. I am embedding, right? But in Java, it has a relationship. Employee has address, has a relationship, right? So it is possible that a class has other class object. So what happens if you do that? So if a class has normal data types, that's fine. If other data types, how to handle that? So you have to tell the Hibernate that whether you are embedding or not. So if you make embed, so it creates it creates embedded. It behaves as a embedded. So how it behaves? It creates a separate columns in the same table as street and pin. So street and pin is nothing but an address. Yes, correct. Instance variables of address comes as columns. Street and pin are coming. So that is what, right? Here if you see in the console, pin code and street name are coming. Whatever the columns you have, that these columns you are these two collection of these two is nothing but address, right? No, that is not possible, right? Uh, no, no. Actually, in one second. In Hibernate, right? You don't play with any SQL queries. You never see any SQL here, right? Because again, if you start writing your SQL queries, database dependent queries you have to write, right? So, I mean, you don't use SQL queries here. Uh, Suppose you want like this, you have to write some logic from our side only. That means um, while generating address, right? So uh, something like maybe uh, so suppose I don't want street name should come, right? I don't, let's say I can keep transient variable. I don't want street should come here, so I can have transient. I think I'm not sure. So that it will not serialize. Transient is stopping is serialization. Serialization is not nothing but a persisting, right? So I think suppose if I make street as transient, right? So I'm running the program, run program again, run as Java application. Okay, so I'm executing the program. See, street name you're not seeing in the column as a column because you said it's a transient. You told that I don't want to create a column, right? I don't want to create a column, street column. So I address mentioned as street name mentioned as transient, right? Suppose, I mean, to fulfill your requirement, what I can do is I can do it like this. I can make this also transient. Okay. So in the setter method, I want to take one more like private address, uh, string address, right? Something like this. And I want to generate a setters and getters for address. Source generate getters and setters, right? So set address is nothing but, or get address is nothing but street plus bin. Okay. Okay. So something like this. I can do this. Let's see what happens when I run as Java application. See, if you see here, address column is there. So I am refreshing. So address is still null because we are not doing this. Okay, so set pin, set address. Okay, so in the address table, what I will do is So by default some empty. So let me run this. Okay, something like this. So you can write your own business logic. So right here what I did, whenever set pin and set address, I'm initializing the address also. In the setter method of these two, set pin and set address, I'm also initializing address. I'm also updating the address based on setter methods. Right? So something like this. I mean, if you want only address, you can just use an address, right? It doesn't even require these all. Uh, just a address should be enough. So street name pin code is not required here, even if you want address, right? I can use only address, right? And in the Hibernate, I don't say pin code and all. I will just say dot set address. This should be enough. So this is generated, it takes it as address. So this is about embedding. This is about embedding. Okay. In the tomorrow session, we will